I'll give you an example of one of the things that Art used to do relative to ETs and UFOs and everything. That I think rarely to never does George ever do this. I just stopped listening to him. Maybe you've heard him do this, but usually 2 or 3 nights a week, because Art Bell was on 6 nights a week. And then on Sunday nights, he had a stand-in, Whitley Strieber from New York, who wrote that book, Communion, about all the visitations that he and his family got from ETs at their summer cabin up in the Catskill Mountains, upstate New York. So he would do the show on Sunday nights. But at least 2 or 3 nights every week, Art would have a call-in time. Well, not only was he syndicated all across the United States and in Canada, but he was on shortwave around the world. So here in the US, you say, okay, it's call-in time. If you've seen a UFO, if you're a trucker, you're out in the truck listening to me, and you've seen a UFO out your windshield because you're driving at night, maybe you're in Australia right now, call in. We want to hear your story.
I remember that.
Yeah, and that's so he'd have people call in from around the world, and you could tell by the tone in somebody's voice, they weren't making it up. Maybe they had just seen it moments ago and they called in and got through to Art. Oh my gosh, Art, you won't believe what I just saw. And when over a period of years, probably 20 years, I listened to Art Bell, because he was on from 10 at night till 4 in the morning, every night.
Those magical hours.
The middle of the night, yeah.
So magical.
Yeah, and he would have so many people call in with real-time experiences. Sometimes they were actually looking at something when they would call in. So I know there have been a lot of listeners over the years to Art. There's a kind of a different generation now that never heard him. But he exposed a lot of people to, and PDF people, inventors call in and talk about free energy devices. Yeah, I had one and I got raided by the NIBs, by the feds. We took everything in my lab. That's what they used to do to Royal Raymond Rife back in the 1920s when he was curing cancer with frequencies. They'd raid his lab and take everything.
Do you know how much bad publicity is written about Rife? And yes. Who knows if it's paid? Who knows if it's planted?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. They just are trying to push him down.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you could explain your knowledge of what you think Men in Black are. What does that mean for people who don't know?
Apparently they dress just like the MIB movies with.
Well, that's where they got it from, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And but apparently that term existed before the movie was ever made. And the only reason they say Men in Black is because they wear a black hat, they wear a black suit, they wear a black shirt with a black tie, black shoes, black socks. Everything is black. So they just call them. But I believe that they're government agents that are sent out to suppress this kind of information. Simple as that. So, whoever's listening in on us right now, let's assume that your electricity was cut off on purpose as a little warning flag, like you said, because we're talking in sensitive areas. Well, if somebody comes pounding on my door, for example, we're talking like this, they'd probably be all dressed in black. Hey, tone it down a little bit. We don't want you talking about this stuff to so many people. Amongst your friends, no big deal. We know you've been doing that for a long time. I mean, I called in on a talk show one time, probably 25 years ago. There was a guy broadcasting nationally out of Florida, and the name of his show was We the People. And he was talking about the black unmarked helicopters that people will see sometimes. You've got no markings on which is illegal as far as the FAA goes here in the United States. You got to have letters and a call letter, kind of like a car has a license plate. Black helicopters. So I happened to call in on the show. And I don't even remember what I said now. It was so many years ago. But about 10 minutes later, my place here got buzzed by a black helicopter. And one of my neighbors, about 8 doors down, Frank, I saw him a couple of days ago at the supermarket. I mean, a couple of days later. This was 20 years ago. And he says, "Oh, Dennis," he says, "I was listening when you called into Harder's show, his name was Chuck Harder was his name, Harder, Chuck Harder. He says, I heard you call in on Chuck's show, and when he was talking about black helicopters, and he says, did you notice that a black helicopter about 10 minutes after you got off the line was buzzing up and down our street here? So I said, yeah, I sure did. How could we miss it? He was flying really, really low. And I went running out my front door and out of my front yard, looked up, and sure enough, it had no markings. It was exactly what Chuck was talking about on his show. And I don't know what I said that triggered them to want to buzz me, but I guess it was their way of saying, yes, we're listening all the time. Right. And we always have black helicopters close by. Wow.
I mean, we can go as deep as we want to go with this, obviously. Just like Siri on our phones, if you don't really manage your settings properly, so Siri's picking up our conversation, and they're going to give you the right ads and the right, sure, customization on your web search, also your social media. Yep. And then Siri and Amazon and Apple and Facebook, and they're all working together.
Yes.
And so that's what this whole thing is about with disclosure of privacy policies. But still, you still have an open mic. And that's why a lot of people, there's so many people have said they think about something now and Siri sends them an ad. Oh my God, it's happened to me. It's happened to me. Yes. I thought of something and I go on and there it is. So, I mean, we're really starting to get interconnected in a whole nother level. And I know that there's a lot of information that's out there in the secret government that is not being shared with the public, that is already available. Higher technology in every single way that you can imagine, from the medical communities to transportation to energy. The technology is already here, and a lot of it has already been produced years ago, and they're keeping it from us so that we don't use it.
Yes. Another very famous author that died a few years back, but it's interesting how when you're immersed in all of this stuff, the people that you end up meeting, right? And a very famous author on this subject matter of the kind of stuff that Eric von Daniken's books are all about. His name is Zecharia Sitchin. Zecharia Sitchin was on Art Bell's show many times. And I still have a copy of his book called The 12th Planet, okay, that I bought back in the 1970s. Still have that cover. Where he talked about the Anunnaki visiting our planet. The 12th planet being the planet Nibiru. Ultimately, NASA discovered that, but of course, they didn't want to dare endorse that Zecharia Sitchin and the Sumerians knew about Nibiru before they did, so they called it the 10th planet. You can look that up. Research the 10th planet. That's what NASA chose to call it or name it. So fast forward to the future, back 5-6 years ago, I meet this fellow that's running one of the casinos out here. And he was part Indian, so he held the gaming license. Plus he was a PhD in all kinds of different engineering and everything. He had like 5 PhDs. He built the largest solar array in the whole United States just for the casino there. So it runs the entire casino, plus he sells electricity back to the grid. Well, I got to talking to him, was sitting in his office there one day at the casino, and we got to talking about Zecharia Sitchin. He says, I met him, Dennis. I said, you met Zecharia Sitchin? He said, yes. I said, how did you meet Zecharia Sitchin? He says, well, the US government and NASA always wanted to know, how did he know and write about that 12th planet clear back in the 1970s? Well, at the time when he wrote that book, he was one of only 12 people on the whole planet that could read and write and translate ancient Sumerian texts. So that was how he got all that information. So because my buddy here at the casino was a real brilliant fellow and had done special things for the government, I guess, previously, he says, the US government called me up and said that they wanted, Zecharia Sitchin was up in his years. They wanted me to spend and be open about who I was to Zecharia. The government has sent me, I'm supposed to spend 2 years with you, and they want me to give them a discernment on whether or not, how you gathered all that information that you put into your books, and why was it so accurate, And do I believe that you're for real? So he says, Dennis, he says, I spent 2 years with Zecharia Sitchin. We became very, very good friends. And he was totally for real. And everything that he wrote in those books about advanced technologies, because of course the Anunnakis are from outer space, if you will, just like the Arcturians and Pleiadians and all. And so all of that information that he wrote in his books was true. And it was just interesting to me that I just happened to bump into the guy that spent pretty much the last 2 years of Zecharia Sitchin's life with him, and then could look me straight in the eye and say, that wasn't a bunch of fiction that he was writing. That stuff was all true.
Yeah, wow. They've been living a long time.
Yes. And for those of you that have never heard of the 12th planet, or planet Nibiru, it's spelled Nibiru, Nibiru. Right. It's on about a 3,600 year loop around the sun. Okay, we go around every 365 days. This planet takes 3,600 years, and it goes way out past Pluto and then loops back in again. Well, some of the theories about Nibiru, besides being the planet where the Anunnaki live, which is what the ancient Sumerians wrote about, that then Zecharia Sitchin put in his books, it's also fascinating how all this ties together. So, yeah. And of course,
it continues even into Hollywood. It continues into the movie industry.
Sure.
Steven Spielberg, with Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Oh yes. My God, the story behind that.
Oh yes.
Woo!
Absolutely.
That's a whole other movie within a movie. A movie.
I just read recently about a story, somebody that was in a screening room watching that when it was first going to be released. Spielberg was in the room, and so was Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan apparently leaned over to the person next to him, who was some high-ranking person, and said, if they only knew how true this is. As he was watching that film.
Ronald Reagan actually mentioned it, that he was one of the few presidents that acknowledged alien presence.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, from what I understand, there was somebody, I was a government official or somebody, I don't know who contacted Steven Spielberg to create and make this movie. It's a form of disclosure. It's called soft, I guess it's called soft disclosure, right?
Yes, exactly.
When you start warming the public up to what is true.
Yes.
And this story was based on real true facts and a real story.
Yes.
That actually happened.
Well, and you look at how much of the technology has, come in for real. I mean, yeah, our first cell phones were flip phones, right?
Just a side note, can we just have a moment about Richard Dreyfuss?
Sure.
Performance.
Oh yeah, go.
I mean, that was so incredible. It was the performance of his life. I
agree. It was incredible.
I mean, we were there with him.
Oh yeah.
It was the most
we made. When they were climbing up the rocks and peered over, and the UFOs were just coming in. The look on his face.
Now, isn't it true there's some footage, there's some photographs out there of the actual landing when that big door opens in the ship, and then you see all the light beings walking out in the shadows with the light behind them, right? I think there's an actual leaked black and white photograph of that moment taken by one of the photographers that has been leaked, that's out on the internet. I have to pull it up. I have to find it. It almost kind of looks similar to that scene, but you do see all the engineers and all the scientists and everybody all in a line with their clipboards and everything. But all of it was real. E.T. also, which is funny because Steven Spielberg again was contacted.
Yes.
Making, hold on, let me rub my nose. Making a alien like cozy, like yummy, like fun, like kid friendly. And then that's a form of desensitization. And also there's, the Jodie Foster movie Contact. There's so many alien movies that have come out recently.
And I've read from a few different sources that Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek.
Him up.
Yeah. that he was channeling ETs to get the information for his
and
scripts.
He's responsible for, those of you who don't know, he's responsible for Star Trek. He's the creator and writer of Star Trek. And Gene worked, I don't know if it was undercover, but he worked for the law enforcement. For some reason, he was on their payroll. And he actually worked in some sort of detective role where he investigated cases, which I find so peculiar.
I didn't know that. That's fascinating.
That's fascinating.
Wow.
And then the other thing fascinating, Lucille Ball, who is just a straight up Starseed Galactic Federation of herself. Like she is a phenom. She was the one who greenlighted Gene's Star Trek when nobody else would. And she was the first woman.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And that's a really big deal. And it was a big deal at the time. She broke ground in so many areas, but this is one of the areas that she took full responsibility. People didn't want to take Star Trek on, and she was willing to do it because she saw the importance of it. And Star Trek is very important. There's a lot of stories that are true stories that that
in
are.
fact, I'll tie two things in there. One is obvious, okay? We all know how they had they called them communicators, and it flipped open. Well, what was the first style of cell phones? They all flipped open.
Right.
And Star Trek had their flip open communicators, as they called them, long before we had cell phones. That was back in the 60s, late 60s, if I remember correctly, mid-late 60s, when all that stuff was coming out. And then, do you remember in that show, they had food materializers, almost like.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, almost like our.
Didn't you tell me off camera that there is food materializers that exist right now?
Yes, and where I found that out was from Emery Smith. He says in those deep underground facilities, okay? He says, just like you saw in Star Trek, I want a piece of hot apple pie with melting ice cream on the top. And it makes that funny, and it appears, it's just like looking through the window of your microwave, but there's nothing there. And you give it a verbal command of what you want, and it appears. Well, he says,
is it based on like a 3D type of printing machine, do you think?
Exactly. And he called it a 3D food printer.
Okay.
He says, that's how I eat lunch every day. And he says they figured out how to do it to where the food tastes as good or better than anything that you've tasted organically grown, and it has more nutrients than the best organic food that you can grow on the surface. And he says, and it tastes sensational. And he says, and I love to eat because Emery's a big, strong, hefty, works out with weights and everything, handsome guy too.
Where is this building that he's talking about? What do you know?
Well, these are deep underground facilities. He says, I worked underground. Sometimes they didn't know where I was working. And he says, and I'll tell you why. They have these underground trains. He says, it's not really a train. It's like a large egg-shaped rides on a magnetic, suspended on a magnetic track, so there's no wheels or rails or anything touching. He says they go about 700 miles an hour. Sometimes I go down 30 stories. They put me on one of those. It's kind of disorienting once you're down in that depth. So once the thing takes off, you don't know if you're going east or west or north or south.
Right. Right.
And he says when you're riding along at 45 minutes at 700 miles an hour, and it stops at 30 stories down, you do your autopsy, you do your job, you hop back on that transport, it takes you back to maybe Los Alamos or Area 51 or whatever deep underground facility he was working at, because he worked at all of them. He says, sometimes I knew where I was on the other end. Because maybe somebody I was talking to, this is, 40 stories underground under Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is, of course, supposedly where the Roswell crash was taken to be reverse engineered, was to Wright-Patterson. So all these stories tie together, but, he was traveling all over the place underground. So he says, sometimes I knew where I was, sometimes I didn't. You're not allowed to ask any questions.
These tunnels, I understand, can go from the West Coast to the East Coast.
Yes.
In I think it's 13 minutes.
Yes, really fast. Really fast.
Yeah, and that government officials take those trains.
Yes, you may not be old enough to remember, but you remember on landlines when there was what they called party lines?
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, where you pick up the phone and your next door neighbor was talking to somebody.
Yeah.
Until they were done, right?
Yeah.
Well, when I was living in Orange County many years ago, this would have been in the early 70s, and I had a landline that was a party line with somebody else. I don't remember who it was. And it was the strangest thing. I picked up to make a call, and it wasn't the neighbor or whoever it was that I was on my party line. I could tell it was like two military guys talking. And one of them was somewhere in Nevada, and one of them was at the military base in San Diego down at Miramar. And at the end of the conversation, they were talking about some pretty strange stuff. It's been so many years, and I had no way of recording it. I don't remember what the content was, but it was pretty sensitive stuff. And one of them said to the other, well, I'm going to take the underground train and I'll see you in 20 minutes. Blew me away. I had my hand over the receiver so they couldn't hear me breathing, and I was listening to every word. And I realized, well, there's some sort of, well, then years later, up near Giant Rock in Landers, near the Institute of Mental Physics, I met people up there that said, oh yeah, when you hike out here around Giant Rock, sometimes you can hear rumbling underground and you can smell diesel fuel coming up through the sand.
Wow.
Which means that there's underground tunnels where they're taking stuff in trucks back and forth, probably between Area 51 in the Nevada test site and Miramar Naval Base on the coast in San Diego. So I've had quite a number of really unusual experiences, you know, and I never had any other person on that party line than the normal person ever again, or any time before. Only when I had those two military guys, one in Nevada and one in San Diego. Never happened again, just that one time. Now, I don't know, I don't understand how it happened, but what are the chances of being able to eavesdrop? I mean, I almost think maybe it was some of our ET friends that says, hey, Dennis, if you're not quite believing this stuff yet, we're going to tune you into a party line that's going to blow your mind. I don't know.
They're very involved. The alien activity, the UFOs that are cloaked and hovering, the motherships that are above this planet and above all of us are extremely involved. They're very, you know, they're not allowed by universal law to interfere with any of our actual development, but what they can do is offer suggestions or give nudges or like psychic nudges or give channeled information or downloads to kind of encourage along the evolutionary path of humans. So there is a lot of interest and a lot of benevolent beings. People are afraid of the alien agenda. I believe as far as the alien agenda and the reptilian programming, and I'm not going to go all the way into the conversation of the Illuminati and all that. That's not what I'm going to talk about right now.
Right.
But what I am going to talk about is programming. And I want to talk about programming because I've spent a good portion of my life understanding it. And so programming is simply, let's say you take a child, you put them in a white room for 15 years and feed them information. So you give them certain magazines, certain books, certain media, and you tell them who they are, what their skin color is, what to eat, what to do. And they're developing and they trust their environment because they're children, and they grow and they develop and they believe what they just consumed.
Exactly.
That changes the way they perceive life. That it morphs it into whatever the program, you know, whatever the hidden message or whatever the agenda of the people that are giving this information.
Exactly.
So then the child goes into the world and thinks that that is the way things are. And then you try to go and reprogram that child and say, no, that's not the way things are. You were just in this white room and this is all the information that was given to you, but there's more. That child, the way the brain works, the brain is working with this innocence of, you know, I just believe what I see and I just believe what I hear. So it's very innocent that we take information in. And so it's very difficult for us to relinquish that, to release that, to let that go. Like when I found out about the Holy Trinity after coming out of Christianity that I was in for my entire life, born and raised, up until I was like, you know, 18 to like 23 is when I started to awaken out of religion. But when I started to find out that the Holy Trinity has been replicated so many times by so many different organizations over the course of different civilizations.
Yes.
And they were just called different things. There was different Jesuses and different Holy Ghosts and different God essences.
Exactly.
And yeah, so, and then when I found that out, and then I found out how the church is involved, and then you just have to watch Zeitgeist. That will really help clear this all
Excellent
up.
suggestion. Yes.
Yeah,
I've seen that.
great.
I've rewatched that several times.
Yeah.
There's so much to absorb.
I've watched it several times, but especially for somebody like me who is a diehard Christian and I really believed in Jesus Christ, which I still do. And I do believe that he was a great teacher,
Yes.
but absolutely. And Muhammad and Gandhi and Buddha and all of them are just great master teachers that came to the planet. However,
Yes.
when it was time for me to choose a new way of thinking, I was discouraged and I was upset because I felt let down and I felt hoodwinked and betrayed
Yes.
by religion, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
very unhappy, very angry about that, and that went on for during my dark years, and I was upset. So then, as I started to pay attention to media, I thought that in the 50s and 60s, especially when the television came out, you just believe what the advertiser tells you. If they tell you this orange juice is good for you, and you don't question that it has aspartame in it, you just drink it, and you don't have, you're not questioning anything, and you just feel everybody has your best interest. So there's like
Exactly.
an innocence, right?
Yes, there is. Yes.
And with the way we used to look at, let's see if I have something that's written, but the way we used to look at a written book, like words on a page, we used
Yes.
to look at that, and that's the holy grail. If you saw black ink on paper and it's written, then it is the final word.
Exactly.
And let me tell you, we lived by that motto, like, oh, it was in the newspaper, so we really did that. And nobody questioned the integrity of the editors and the news writers, and nobody questioned the integrity of the reporters. And of course, they were there with integrity on their own because they wanted to deliver news in the best possible way.
Sure.
However, what they didn't know is that their CEO and the stockbrokers that owned that news company were involved in their private lobbying and all their private interests with the government.
Sure.
The government. So here we are now finding out that this rabbit hole, as you go in and start to find out more and more about who's kind of pulling these puppet strings and who's in control of the information that's coming towards us, you can get really upset. You can get really discouraged, and you can get mad. But here's where I'd like to jump in as a life coach for 15 years and a shaman, and I reprogrammed myself personally many times and helped many people reprogram. Is first you have to get your head wrapped around the idea that nobody's trying to do anything to you specifically, like you're a target, they're coming after you and you're going to go down. It's not that. It's really about marketing, merchandise, and commerce. So they're really just trying to get your influence, your money, your energy, where your attention is. They want to get your dollars.
Exactly.
So that's actually all that's happening. It's just a money game, no surprise, right?
And they want your likes on social media.
Likes on social media. And so everything is regarding where your focus. Nowadays with the internet, it's about the clicks, like who's watching what and where's your attention. So now that's the new gold standard, right? And the millennials spend so much time on the internet. So now the millennials are now the important faction of society and trying to get their attention. But in the 80s, when I was a teenager, they wanted to throw MTV and many things at me. I loved what I saw, but then there's a lot of merchandise I want to buy, etc. So you can see the innocence to the way commerce works. This is not a negative. It's just that this is the way through. It's like corporations are just wanting to make money. CEOs just want to be billionaires.
Right.
And they want to pay 100,000 employees around the world. I mean, so to them and their self-interest, they're just taking care of themselves.
Sure.
So it's not, and they're not trying to antagonize and actually do something to you over there in your home. What they're doing is taking care of themselves. It's self-interest, right?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, right. So now here we are all trying to unplug from this matrix of life, all this information overload. We're all trying to step back, unplug, and find out, well, who the heck are we without all this like programming?
Right.
Here's the best news. The best news is you should be happy that you are a reprogrammable being.
Definitely.
Because if you can pay attention to that part right there and hone in on that, that's where the magic is. That's where the key goes in the ignition and turns.
Yep.
So if you realize and know that you're programmable, that means you can deprogram and you can reprogram into new ways of thinking.
Exactly.
And that's all I do 24/7. I dedicated my life to it because over my history of what I've experienced, I was so dumbfounded about how programming works. And I was so, the level of flabbergasted, I walked around like a zombie for a long time trying to understand how this could have happened to me. That I didn't realize that there was different types of religions that all kind of copied each other.
Yes.
I thought there was just the Christian church always said they're the only ones, they're the best ones.
Oh, yeah, that's how I was raised.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I started delving into metaphysics about the same age that you did, late teens, early 20s. Because I was raised a Baptist, so I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know,
and there's a lot of love in Baptist church and
Christian there is. Oh yeah.
They have good intentions. So I'm not trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and I'm not trying to pin one faction against another. But what I am trying to say, if we stay right down the middle line here, if you want to get through this life peacefully, you just pay attention to the fact that everyone wants something from you. Why? Because you're important. You're an energy machine. You create energy and you deliver energy and you distribute energy. You can create things, you can give things, you can donate things, you can give your time, and that is worth $1. That's worth $1 amount. Your being is worth $1 amount in this planet, the way the system is set up right now. So they see you as a money-making machine for them.
Yep.
And one of the other reasons why I started this group is I wanted to, I don't charge anything for any of this information.
Right.
And I'm not asking money for any membership fees, nothing for my group. And I give wholeheartedly and free. Now somebody can say, well, good for you. You're over there in Malibu. You can get away with that. You could do that. Your husband works, you stay home. I've worked my ass off my whole life. And I've had
I know you have, Oriah, that's for sure.
Yes. Yeah, single mom, married a bunch of times. So that's not the case. But I will say that I wanted to try something new for myself. I wanted to see what it was like to give away my knowledge for free.
Yes.
I wanted to give this information away because I believe in information. I believe in setting people free, and I don't believe you have to pay for it. However, there comes a time where I have to pay to put food in my mouth, right?
Exactly.
So at some point, I figure that out. I figure out how to do that. But I wanted to touch people through real energetic exchange. I wanted people to really understand that this is powerful information that they are getting right now at a time when people don't know what is going on with their systems. The government, the education, the healthcare, the political
it's all a mess.
system, yeah, upside down, cracking, breaking.
So you're absolutely right. People want to know, well, is there something more? And if there is, where can we find it? How do we implement it? You know, how do we get all this going? You know, your point about programming and the example of the white room. I remember reading where they would experiment raising cats in a room with only vertical stripes, and other cats they would raise in a room with only horizontal stripes painted on the wall, all the way floor to ceiling. And that, I don't know how long they kept them in there, maybe a couple of years. And then when they let them out into the real world, the cats that had grown up in the vertical stripe world could only see things that was vertical, so they'd run into things that were horizontal. So for example, a wooden chair has 4 legs, but then it'll have the cross pieces, right? Between the legs, to sturdy the legs up. Well, the cat that grew up in a vertical world, so their subconscious mind was programmed only to see things vertical, because all they saw was those vertical stripes all day long. When you let them out and they try to walk underneath that wooden chair, they would run right into the cross piece because they literally couldn't see it. That's how powerful the mind is.
Absolutely.
What we're expecting to see and what we're programmed for. And I like to use the analogy of computers because everybody understands computers. When talking about the conscious and the subconscious mind and how many things the subconscious mind is running on autopilot. But if you compare it to a computer, let's say you got a terabyte hard drive. Well, that can hold a lot of data. I mean, my gosh, you can have feature films in there. You can have thousands of Microsoft Word documents. Think of your subconscious mind as your hard drive, and think of your conscious cognizing mind as the screen, okay? You can have thousands of files on a 1 terabyte drive, that you can only watch one at a time on your screen. You might split the screen up into 4 squares or 8 squares or something like that, but you can't look at the thousands simultaneously. Well, that's how our conscious mind operates. I mean, most people probably would blow their mind, literally, if their conscious mind was constantly aware of everything in their subconscious mind simultaneously.
Well, it's impossible. And also, if you would want to live a life where everything that is happening on the entire planet you can feel and understand and know, I mean, that's not
overwhelming. Exactly.
Yeah, we're not here to experience that. But
exactly.
But I think where we're headed, and the final, as a matter of fact, I feel good. We're closing in on 2 hours. I want to rest your voice. But I wanted to say that the overarching concern and the thing that most people are interested in is how to feel safe during this time.
Yes.
And my suggestion is safety resides within. So you feel safe within your own system. You have your own hard drive. You have your own computer. You have your own internet connection. You have your own Bluetooth device right here and right here and in this interface. And if you connect yourself to your own source energy, which is your higher self, higher intelligence, God self, love, and you connect to your own heart center where you know who you are in your truth, it doesn't matter if you have 40,000 purple aliens running after you. It doesn't matter if you are alive on this planet or you cross over to another dimension. It doesn't matter what happens to you as a being. Your consciousness and your awareness stays intact. You are with yourself all the time. You will never leave you will never leave you. You are always at home with yourself. So when you realize that you are the final destination, you are your own home. Not only, especially if you're a parent, your children will love that you have this experience because they'll feel that in you, and all children need to feel that with their parents. But not only will you feel this, but when you go about your day and your life and you see all this stuff and the rioting and all the things that are happening, you're just going to always know where you're coming from. And you know your truth, and you know where your peace resides, and you know where you are in your safety zone. It's your own safety zone within yourself.
That's an excellent way to explain it.
Because people forget. They forget that this body is an interface. They forget. So they walk out into the world and they forget, they feel invisible. You know how when you go out somewhere you think you're invisible, somehow just a set of eyes walking around?
Yes, yes, exactly.
You don't really know that you're carrying this body with you your entire life. You're responsible for this very expensive, exquisite piece of equipment that you have to keep alive, keep hydrated, make sure it lives a long time, have it working, have the cognition skills.
And have fun with it.
Have fun, enjoy, play with it. Thank you, Dennis.
Yes.
Of course.
Well, so it's the playtime, for example, that does major boosting for your immune system.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah. Unless you have vibrant.
Carrying this body around with you, you don't have to be in fear for your body. If you're coming from knowing who you are, you're not going to put yourself in those situations. You're not going to go out you're not going to call that in. You're going to create environments that are safe for you and your family. So I don't run any safety concerns. I don't have any fear concerns about anything that's been transpiring at all for years. I am totally at peace with what's happening. I'm just openly, visually taking it in. I'm observing, I'm understanding, and I connect to the people around me and let them know they're okay and how they can keep their body whole and complete and feeling good. That's it.
Yes.
Exactly. It's easy.
Talk about weird things happening. I have an Alexa in the room here with
me. Is it on?
She just started talking and talking and talking. I couldn't understand because I was focusing on what you were saying. I have no idea what she said. She was going on and on and on and on. I've never heard her go on and on like that. I don't know what the hell she was talking about. And I didn't say anything to trigger her. I mean, I was just listening.
I got your Alexa excited.
I guess so. Too funny.
That's funny. Hi, Alexa.
Too funny.
I love you. You know, those of you who are watching Dennis right now, you guys don't know he has a little bit of a sore throat. He's been doing a lot of talking on our interviews. So we were going to have a longer session and do 2 parts. Well, we do have 2 parts now, but like we were going to go even longer, but I'm going to save his voice. He's done 2 good 2 hours, and that's why I did more talking this time around, just to give him a break.
Thank
But
you. I appreciate that.
But in the future, yeah, I didn't want to burn you out so you were no good for us next Thursday.
Yeah. No, that's okay. Hey, it's always great fun, and everything always flows the way that it's supposed to flow.
I agree.
I think we've covered some really, really, hopefully inspiring information, so that you all out there are inspired to go do further research, maybe on things that you heard about here for the first time that you weren't familiar with. And don't beat yourself up, cheapers. You know, I should have been investigating this kind of stuff a long time ago. No, don't beat yourself up. Just say to yourself, hey, this was the right time for me to hear it. I needed to hear it from Oriah, or I needed to hear it from Dennis. Yeah, or I needed to hear it from both of them. And the timing is perfect. And now here I am, inspired to go and research some of this stuff on my own. Because just about everything that we've discussed, if you do a search on YouTube, for example, there's probably going to be God knows how many videos talking about it. You know, I mean, I'm amazed. I wear a sacred geometry, I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
It's the Metatron's cube. And it draws a lot of attention, especially it seems like at the supermarket when I'm checking out, right? And you can always tell their eyes are looking at it. And I'll ask them, I say, you know, are you attracted to that somehow? Yeah, I can't quite explain it. Well, what is it? And I'll say, well, it's sacred geometry. What's that? And it's amazing how many people have not heard of sacred geometry. But I always encourage them, go onto YouTube. You're intrigued for a reason. You're attracted to this pattern for a reason. And just for the record, they're finding these patterns now down at the molecular level. When they look with electron microscopes, they're finding these same exact patterns that are carved in the solid rock on the inside walls of Egyptian pyramids and Mayan temples. Wow. Well, wait a minute. They didn't have electron microscopes back then, as far as we know. How did they know about those sacred patterns? So it's all about energy.
Yes.
It's all about love, and reach for that love that's inside of you that Oriah was just talking about. Because when you find that sweet spot during your meditation, where when you come out of it, you say to yourself, I know that I was connected to divine source. Why? Because of the quality and the intensity of the love. And there's nothing like it. And when you connect with that within, then you begin to radiate and broadcast it on a regular basis. And then if you are in some sort of a relationship, or you're looking for a new relationship, you're going to attract the right type of person into your life that is also seeking that divine connection, so that they have more love to share, and they're taking better care of themselves at the same time. Because every time you make that connection, your telomeres are getting longer on your DNA, which means you're younging your body.
You know, I want to bring up something that you just mentioned. It's very important. You were talking about attracting a partner. I think it's so important, and I definitely know we'll go right after this, but I think it's so important to know there's a lot of people who are really afraid of putting themselves out there, because I feel like if they put themselves out there, they're going to attract somebody. What if that person doesn't like them, or, you know, what if it doesn't work? And what I've seen and what I know works is that it doesn't matter if it's going to work out or not. People need to get over that concept that something's not going to work out.
Yeah. If it's not the one, I don't want to go on a date.
Exactly.
Well, fun, have some fun.
Where does that come from? So enjoy the person's company. Connect to the other human being. Let that person inspire you. Let that person open your heart. Maybe they're only going to talk to you one time, maybe only 5 times. It doesn't matter. The fact is that they moved you, and they like ignited and opened your heart chakra, and that soul could have been destined for that moment to do that heart chakra opening for you in that moment. And if you don't receive it because your judgments, and you push it down and you can't hear it because you're scared, that's you not giving yourself permission to have a beautiful experience. And then you go and you start talking negative and telling everybody bad stuff about your dating life, instead of understanding that each person brings a gift. Each person gives you an opportunity for you to feel more. So don't shut people out and don't let people not be a part of your life because it's not the one. It's not long
Exactly.
term. It's because I can't be with them all the time or whatever the story is. Let them impact you however they impact you.
Exactly.
You're here to open your heart.
And sometimes they can be the one.
Yeah.
For a nice length of time. And then if you grow apart, then you just say, hey, before we reincarnated,
exactly.
we made a deal before we reincarnated. We would rendezvous on this timeline for a 3-year period. Then you go your way to learn more things that you came to this timeline for. I'm going to go my way. And we wish each other well and continue to love each other and care about each other, but you're just going a different way. And that's okay.
That's okay.
But it's so much more fun. I still absolutely love all of my previous intimate partners.
Yeah.
I don't have any regrets. I'm not holding any grudges. You know, when it comes to grudges, I always like to ask people, gee, is that a lifetime grudge you're going to hold on to? You know, you got to listen to Buddha. You know what Buddha says? Holding on to anger for another person is like holding a hot coal in your own hand and expecting them to get burned.
That's really good. That's true.
It doesn't work that way. You're the one that's getting burned from holding on to that anger. So let it go. If you have any angry feelings about any people that you feel have wronged you, whether it was an intimate partner or a sibling or a parent or a work associate or whatever, let it go. Just be all about love. And the more that you connect with that love that's inside of you, the more you will radiate love. And then you know what? You'll start attracting the kind of people that you want to hang out with into your life.
If we can't have fun, what are we doing here, right?
That's right.
We're loosening up. We're lightening up.
It's always fun.
We're talking about Men in Black. We don't care. We're not scared.
That's right.
I'm not going over to Joe Rogan's channel to get scared about the Illuminati. I'm coming over to where it's fun. I want to play. I want to have a good time, and still I can be intelligent. Still like to talk about quantum mechanics.
Focusing on the good and loving things, and things that we would like to see in our future.
Let's put a good spin on what they call conspiracy theories.
Exactly.
Let's spin up.
You know, and I'm glad that you mentioned that term because so many people use it. Conspiracy theory.
I hate that term.
I do too.
Well,
I do too.
Only conspiracy theorists would say that.
Yeah, because number one, what's a conspiracy?
Right.
Conspiracy is conspiring to do something. What's conspiring to do something? Planning to do something. So if 2 or more people are planning to do something, you can also say they are conspiring to do something, which leads them to the word conspiracy. Okay, right. But it doesn't mean it's a theory.
Doesn't mean it's a theory at all.
2 people can plan to go on a hike. See, they were conspiring to go on a hike. Well, does that mean it's a theory? No, they went on the hike. They went on the hike. It wasn't. Did they conspire? Yes.
People need to know that big money can and do pay for website listings, articles, controversy, ads, whatever, to disprove, to push down, to make fun of. They hire writers, they hire bloggers. They do that so that when you Google a certain thing, you see all this negativity like, oh, this is a hoax, this is this.
Exactly.
Those people were paid. And
yes.
And their job is to tell you they're not paid. I mean, they cannot reveal the source. And this happens all the time. So I just don't want, when people go Google something, they still are under the impression that what they're Googling is true.
Well, and look how many people believe polls.
Yeah.
Oh, the polls say this or the polls say that. I don't want to get into politics, but my point is I've never believed polls. Why? Because if I was the designer of the poll, depending on who it is that I poll, I can make the slant go whatever way I want.
Right.
Depending on the demographics of who I'm polling. You know, I mean, if I want to get opinions on quantum physics, and I'm only polling PhD quantum physicists from prominent universities around the world, I'm going to get a lot different perspective and different answers than polling a bunch of Ferrari mechanics, for example. It's just to keep.
You know what we should talk about next time is we should talk about how if you come up with a scientific discovery and you break the ceiling and reinvent some major area of science that can change humanity forever, and they do not it lets you put it into their white papers or any of their documents or scientific research papers that are
Exactly.
established
Yeah.
by groups of men primarily, and some women, that
Yes.
are, they're a club, it's a group of, we will look and see if your evidence meets our criteria and standard, and if it does, I'll allow you to be in this type of
Journal. Yeah. Trade journal.
Document. Yeah. And so if it's not, then all of a sudden you can't get a patent, and all of a sudden you can't move your invention along, and you can't help humanity. And I have seen so many YouTube interviews with inventors who have invented things like tires on vehicles that will never wear out, things like that. And
Yes.
they are not allowed to bring these objects to
the market.
To the market.
Exactly.
And of course we know why. There's been inventions where those little 9D cell batteries and stuff, there's batteries that can last for 10 years. They exist, and we could just go on and on and on and on. And here's the point. Dennis and I, look at us. We're not mad. We know about all this. We've known it for a long time. We're not sitting here doom and gloom. There's no fire in the sky. We're not scared. And it doesn't mean that we're oblivious. We're totally aware of it. It's just that we're very connected and concerned about what's happening right
We don't
here.
we do not let any of that stuff get us down in any way.
It makes no sense.
There are too many fun things and interesting things to focus on. I always tell people, if you're going to watch the news, if you're going to watch it, train yourself to watch it with emotional detachment. Yes. Because every time that you get angry about something, angry, anxiety, fear, all of those different, every one of those, and a combination of them is even worse, will weaken your immune system.
Now, Dennis and I are not saying that we are taking a stand on things that are right or wrong. So we're not saying we're not saying that we're ignoring it. We're not saying that we don't support it. We're not saying anything like that. We're just being neutral. Some people say if
it's all about energy. Yeah, it's all about energy. When you're watching something, don't get mad at it.
That's it. We're just saying to take care of your holy temple. We're telling you to take care of your sacred geometry, which is you. And so that you can produce better, clear thinking thoughts, your emotional state is healthier and more balanced. You can have conversations with people, help people more. What good does it do if you are devastated, depressed, and whatever, in shock over what's happening, and it takes you out, you have a heart attack, a nervous breakdown, you end up in the hospital? What good does that do to society if you're out of the game? So stay in the game.
Much better to be a shining example of vibrant health in spite of what's going on.
And to do that, you have to believe that you are the source energy. It comes from you. It comes from the people around you, the people who love you. I get fueled by Dennis. Dennis gets fueled by me. I get fueled by Riz and my group and people and friends. We fuel each other. That's a renewable energy. That's a resource that's ongoing forever.
Yes, it is. Yes.
We magnetize each other. We uplift each other. Oh, I just love it so much.
And we inspire, and that's the biggest thing. I really hope that everybody that was able to listen to this is inspired once again to be a happier human being, hopefully with some of the information that we've been providing. And I know that that's very important to me, and I know it is to Oriah as well, that when we part ways from this sharing, that you're a happier person. Maybe you learn some ways to be a happier person, which means you have more to share with everybody that's around you. Because ultimately, if you can't have a happy time on this planet, well, what's it all worth? I want to have fun.
What's the point? You're the one that's going to suffer. You're the one that has to go to sleep at night. You're the one that has to live in your body. And, I hate to say it, and I know this is not like a transformational coaching call, talk, whatever, presentation, but it's really when it comes to blame, when you start blaming that side, that person, you start putting all your power over there. Those people are responsible for how you feel. And you're not in your creativity. You're not in your source energy. So you're giving away your power. And so then you just don't get to have a good quality life. It's not worth it. Then your relationships suffer. You're not able to share yourself properly. People can't see you properly. People have to go dig you out of your tunnel and try to get you to come out and play in the sunshine with all the rest of the kids.
Exactly.
It's not worth it.
No.
So you got You got two of the funnest people that you could ever meet, you guys. You don't know what kind of big time space travelers we are. So we're just so happy that we could be here with you guys. And many of you listen to us right before you go to bed. I don't know why, but they text me and tell me all the time, I'm going to watch it tonight before I go to sleep. So I guess it's a good feeling thing that right before you go to sleep into dream state, this is a great show to watch.
You listen to things that are uplifting
Yeah.
and inspiring and enlightening, so that
and intelligent and logical.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that your emotions are in a calm and loving place when you fall asleep, because then you'll wake up that way.
That's so true.
If you're calm and feeling, if you're calm and broadcasting love and receiving love all simultaneously when you fall asleep, you'll be amazed at how much better you will sleep and how sensational you'll feel and energized when you wake up in the morning. So give that a try. I'm gonna sign off with that information.
Love you, Dennis.
So be it. Love you too.
Love you,
Namaste.
everybody. Love you.
Namaste to everybody. We love you all. Thank you for joining us again. I just knocked down my microphone, but thank you so much all for listening. I hope you got a few laughs out of this too. We always do.
Thanks, everyone. Good night. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
And good morning.